Hello and welcome. I wanted to spend a bit of today trying to theorize what I think is going to be happening in Deltarune Chapter 5. Now, I don't know if you heard the news, but Deltarune Tomorrow. Anyway, jokes aside, Deltarune's coming out very, very soon, and I want to predict some stuff before Chapter 5 inevitably changes my thoughts and feelings. If you're here, I'm assuming you don't need me to explain deep Deltarune lore. You're probably stuck in the Delta hole with me. So, yeah, let's just jump right into it. 3, 2, 1, go! Okay, so, what do I think the plot's going to be about? I think that, broadly speaking, Chapter 5 is about accepting that dark times are approaching and that change is inevitable. You can see there's a lot with the major characters trying not to freak out over impending tragedy and desperately trying to avoid said tragedies. So, for example, the fun gang are needing to realize that their adventures aren't just fun and games anymore. There's a lot of real stakes. You sort of get a taste of that with Undyne being captured, but you also can see that even now Susie's trying to believe that everything's just going to stay the same. Yeah, then of course there's the final prophecy, which everyone is a little bit nervous about. Outside of just the major characters, there's also how Asgore needs to recognise that his relationship with Toriel has changed, and that he presumably can't get that back, at least not in the same way. So I suspect that there is a high chance that this is going to be the central theme to Chapter 5. Toby mentions a lot in the newsletter of the sun setting, about how we have one last good adventure, one last fun adventure before presumably everything changes and the sun sets. So I suspect that in terms of other plot stuff, I do think that there's a chance that we'll spend more time in the light world than we expect. Now, this is because the festival has been signposted to be hugely important. So I don't doubt that it's going to be a pretty big portion of this chapter. It feels like there's a lot of different plot lines which are all going to come to a head during the festival. Maybe we'll get some optional scenes of who hangs out at the festival. So, you know, that could be fun. But yeah, I think that 100% the festival will be huge in this chapter. Even if we don't see all of it, I think that seeing at least the start of it is going to be pretty huge. Okay, the Dark World. Now, the Dark World is obviously combining Asgore's love of flowers with this kind of Japanese theme, this Shinto shrine and general sort of Japanese vibe to it. So I have a hunch that this is combining Asgore's love of flowers, his comics, and Toriel. I think that specifically his comics are manga, and I have a feeling that Toby is going to make a ton of puns related to this, because he is the biggest fan of Japanese media I've probably ever seen. The 7 flowers will become darkness, with lots of knowledge about Asgore's life and his past. So for those who don't know, these are the flowers which are in Asgore's back room. They are the same ones that he has had in his wedding photo, and you can tell that these are kind of symbolically tied to Asgore's idea of the past, this idealized version of the past that he's having to keep in glass to try and maintain. Now, I don't entirely know what the role of these 7 flowers are going to be, but I think it's a pretty fair assumption that they're going to have traits of the fallen humans and possibly Flowey and the Echo Flowers. I don't entirely understand where these flowers are going to go, but what with some of the Beauty and the Beast imagery and references we've had, I do somewhat wonder if that is going to tie into their broader meaning in the story. Okay, I think that we're also going to be getting a decent number of Undertale references due to this chapter being about remembering the past, about trying to not look forwards. I don't entirely know whether this is going to be direct things like Flowey, Asgore, or whether we're going to more so get allusions to it through monster designs which maybe parallel Undertale monsters, or something else. I don't know. I feel like out of all of the chapters so far, this feels like the one where we would be most prone to getting Undertale references. This is a big one. The sun in the dark world and the sun setting. I am very curious about this, and I don't think that it's going to be as straightforward as just being an aesthetic thing. I think that this sun is going to be symbolic of reality bleeding into the dark world. This idea that even in this sort of fantasy world where everything is dark, there is still a sun, that things are getting more real and reality is going to be coming knocking soon. So, yeah, I don't know. I do think that this is going to be the last adventure that is kind of classically fun and cheery in the way that Toby Fox games usually are. I feel like tonally there's a chance that chapters 6 and chapter 7 are going to end up being closer in tone to the True Lab and some of the kind of more darker, sinister moments that we've seen so far in Deltarune. Okay, now let's talk about some more specific ideas about various different plot lines. So, the Eggman. I think that the Forgotten Man's final room is going to give us something. Whether it's just finding his final egg or having all of your eggs in one basket. I have a feeling that maybe we'll get some backstory for Chris, or potentially, this is one thing which I thought was quite interesting, this idea of finding a new room in between in a location that we didn't expect. Now, I think that my favourite idea for this is that there's a street that we might be missing in Hometown, and I think that the idea of being able to find a room between that Chris has chosen to not let us see would be really interesting and would tie in quite well with how the Forgotten Man is kind of hidden in the crevices of this world rather than front and center and being this key central character to things. I really don't think that this plotline is going to result in any kind of boss fight, so I'm just gonna leave that there. The Shadow Crystals. Alright, this might be a boring guess, but I think that getting all the Shadow Crystals is going to give us the Pure Crystal when we give them to Sean. I don't entirely know what the Pure Crystal will do. I think that the Shadow Crystals are items that flip the narrative on its head in some way, and getting the Pure Crystal is something that has interested both Gaster, it's interested Sean, and it's interesting how you get this deeper, closer connection to the various different secret bosses. And particularly with how Gerson's fight feels nearly mandatory, but isn't. I definitely feel like it is hinting at this idea that getting the Shadow Crystals is essential to changing the way the story ends out. Maybe it will form the Twisted Sword, or maybe it will give us some other item we've not got. I'm not too sure yet. Okay, friend, this stupid cat, this pink and gold creature, I have no clue what to think of this thing. Maybe it'll appear to this chapter, maybe it's just gonna, you know, keep being a little weirdo for a bit, who knows. I do think that the emphasis on pink and gold this chapter seems to be important, and I do wonder whether that's going to become a bit more illuminated this chapter. I think even if we don't see Friend, we're almost definitely getting more of an explanation of what does this combination of pink and gold mean, because You can see it in Susie, you can see it in Friend, you can see it in Spamton. You can even see it in characters, you can see it in Undertale too, like the colours that are used for the spare icons. They're yellow, but if you talk to the Frogger and piss them off, it turns pink. Does that mean something? I don't know, but I'm sure that we'll find out something about the symbolism of this very, very soon. Gaster. I think that Gaster is going to talk to us at least once in this chapter. I think that he has opinions regarding the Egg and Shadow Crystal questlines, especially as his Deltarune is getting closer and closer to arrival or completion. I think that there is a chance that we'll talk to him. I don't think we're getting any visible signs of Gaster, but maybe not, I don't know. I know that a lot of this video is me just saying, oh, it could be this, but it could also be this, but genuinely, I think that Toby has managed to prove that he is far less predictable than anyone has suspected. The weird route. This is probably the thing I feel least confident on. I feel like that the ending of Chapter 4 being so different compared to the regular route suggests that this might be past the point of no return. Because prior to this, every single ending, you know, there's slight differences, but everything ends the same way. So I think that there's a chance that the weird route continues after this point, after Chapter 5, but that it will diverge pretty drastically in terms of being a lot, I don't want to say shorter, but I do think that a lot of the weird route is using this twisted sentimentality that the player has in order to see how far they can push various characters and pieces in this world to act to our whims. We're speedrunning plot lines, we're speedrunning developments and sidelining Susie as much as possible to make things both unsatisfying but also twisted and this kind of nasty sentimentality. And yeah, I think that broadly speaking, this is a route that is being used to try and make Chris into a better player vessel, if that makes sense. To try and break their spirit, to break Noelle's spirit. And I don't know, I'm very curious to see where it ends up. No clue what's going to happen with the when did she start to smile ARG that's going on. No clue what Noelle and Chris at the festival could lead to. It is very nerve-wracking, and I don't know what might happen there. Alright. So here's some random bits that I don't really have any other good place to put in, but I do want to mention them at the very least. The white feather that we see in the trailer isn't the white pen of hope. I think that this is a gag or a setup. Maybe it's involving the original Star Walker. I don't know. Malleus will learn how to bake, and we'll get some new recipes that we can actually use. This is kind of baseless, but I feel like what with the implication that wheat is going to be in this chapter, and the weird gag of Malleus not knowing about bread, I think is leading to something, maybe more recipes, maybe it's just foreshadowing something, or maybe it's just a gag, I don't know. You can never know with Toby. So, I don't think that the Flower King Dark World will be the only location explored this chapter. I mentioned before, but I think that the festival may take a larger portion than we think, and I think there is also a chance that we'll actually get to explore more of Hometown beyond what has been cut off at the moment. I think that in terms of plot points that will come to a head this chapter, I think that stuff like Noelle and Susie's growing relationship, Noelle learning about Dark Worlds being real, Burger Pants' failed love life, and the entire situation with Sans, Toriel and Asgore will all come together, and at the very end of the chapter we're going to have Rudy's failing health. Maybe he's going to the festival and then he collapses, maybe something else happens, but I think that this is going to be the point that the roaring will start. It will spark Noelle into making a dark fountain to try and save Rudy, possibly causing the roaring in the process. I don't particularly know what is going to happen with the flowers and the implication with the sword attack that from a Mega Flowers fight. I do have a hunch that maybe the 7 flowers will have characteristics similar to the fallen humans. Maybe they'll share the items or the soul traits that they had in Undertale. But I do think that Toby is plotting something devious with those flowers. I just don't know what. And yeah, with that, I think that's everything. I really hope that you enjoyed, and Deltarune tomorrow. See you later.